Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. It's time to find out if you were right on which one I purchased from the mod collection. Just in case you're not familiar, Gibson Demo Shop, mod collection, they take their factory seconds, they rework them. Sometimes it's just changing up the plastics, other times it's complete refinish, and then occasionally you get a golden goose example like this where they just go absolutely hog wild on it. Now before we rip this thing open, this case seems oddly tall, like taller than normal. But anyways, the weird, wacky, bizarre one that we need to document today is the orange flame top Joe Perry Buckethead meets Jared James Nichols. We've got so much to talk about on this weird, crazy guitar today. But first, okay, we've got a new COA over our headstock, okay. They've now limited us to a half a COA. But I knew it! This thing is different! This is one of those HD cases. You also found them on like the Dusk Tiger. It's got like more of a rigid foam on the interior, so that's actually kind of cool now that I know that. It's also a little bit noisier. But anyways, in case you missed the last episode where I kind of just went over all of them for that particular week, this thing has so much going on it. It's Buckethead because we've got two kill switches on it, but instead of being red, they're all blacked out. We have a single P90 pickup, which kind of reminds you of like Jared James Nichols and a few other. I mean, Joe Perry's actually kind of referenced twice because he also had the Gold Rush Les Paul. That was just a single pickup. But you can get slight Boneyard vibes out of this orange top. I mean, I know that's more of like a yellowish greenish, but similar. It's stretching a bit. And then we've just got a little bit of a throwback with this, a trapeze tailpiece on here for some reason. But this started life as a 60s Les Paul standard, which just makes this so much more confusing. How did it get to them not being routed for a neck pickup? Because normally these are, okay, there's a small blemish somewhere. They had already been built. But the fact that it also has a P90 is strange. It must have not got routed for pickups or something. I don't know. And that's not all. When we flip it over to the backside here, it has something from 2017. This is a Burstdriver circuit, so we actually have a built-in boost/distortion stuff on here. So we'll have to see how this actually sounds. I'm really excited to check that out. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, the reason I picked this up is the Burstdriver prototype for an R8 version was actually on Reverb, so I thought, finally, I can actually get this Burstdriver circuit and I could tear it out and like put it in that prototype, add it to my collection, because for whatever reason, the prototype didn't have that. However, I'm sad that I don't actually have the correct backplate for the Burstdriver, so I think I'm just gonna leave this thing the way it is. It would kind of be injustice to take something so beautiful and, you know, kind of take away some of its majesty in order just to restore some old prototype, right? But I guess now I'm noticing there's no Les Paul model silkscreen on the headstock. We've got blacked out tuners. And did you notice this interesting burst job on the back? That is definitely custom from normal. This is like a very deep molasses color. However, the neck has that in these areas, but not right there. It's a little bit brighter. So it's kind of a little bit of a burst like I was kind of expecting them to do here. First impressions though, it's pretty light. It's not too bad. Some of these 60s and 50s standards, they're either 11 pounds or they're about 8.5. It just depends on the luck of the draw for that. But now with the COA being kind of changed and we only get a half a booklet on this one, I'm wondering if there's anything else that's different. So let's check out our warranty pamphlet. Looks like our regular stuff here. This one only got rated a 4 out of 5. And let me tell you, just briefly looking over this thing, yeah, there's definitely some slightly more major issues with it that we'll talk about on the workbench. But yes, I'm happy. That was not a fluke last time. They are including the baby photo, the photo that they used on the website. Pretty matching resemblance right here. But I really want to take a second just to look at this case. I mean, you see how formed this one is? Usually Gibson USAs are not like this. This is like a circa 2010s-ish case. Not quite sure which one this was originally for, but probably one of the robot guitars, or probably something that had a Bigsby would be my guess, since it has this extra cut. I'm not sure. This is the first one I've seen exactly like this that didn't have like some other special coating over top of it and just says Gibson USA. So that's cool. So I think to learn a little bit more about this one, let's go ahead and throw it on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. This thing is even crazier than I ever thought it was, but I think I have a better understanding of how this might have been able to be spec'd like this without having everything else. So first off, let's start with our pickup route. If you're familiar with Gibson routes, yeah, that doesn't quite look the way it normally does. Especially if we look at the edge right here, it's like all flat, it's not very smooth, it's completely uneven, it actually kind of comes in towards like a V shape. This really reminds me of my hand routing jobs. And if you look over here, you can actually see the burnt wood that has now been clear coated over because this was indeed hand routed. So here's my theory. This guitar got messed up somewhere after the point that the neck was put on it and they're like, hey, let's scrap it, throw it to the demo shop, let them do something with it. So they had a completely blank canvas right here. So what they did is they took a drill bit, you can actually see the ends of them right there, they just went and then they hand routed the rest of this out. I believe this hole is in most Gibsons to begin with, so I don't think that's part of it, but definitely that is how they got it in here. But look at this, we can actually see the little mahogany shelf right there that we don't normally see. Now I think that's because that normally gets routed away when they do the pickup, but since this one was so homemade, it just didn't quite get that far, so that was kind of cool to see. But that's the rest of the channel route right here, so that means we probably have the routing for a neck pickup if you wanted to go crazy and do that yourself too. You know me guys, I'm curious. Let's break out the endoscope. So here we go to find the truth about that. Inside our little pickup route here. Surprisingly, no, there is not a neck pickup route, so you'd have to make it yourself. I guess if I was really thinking back there, I could have guessed that, because they had to make the bridge one themselves, but all we're seeing here is the Killswitch, and the route would have been right there before that. So that makes me laugh. I love it. I absolutely adore it. Now you might view that as shoddy workmanship, but hey, it's the demo shop mod collection. It's not meant to be perfect, it's meant to be fun, and that is the definition of fun. But as far as the pickup, it's just a lead P90 soap bar, 32321, so I mean they likely ripped that out of a 50s Les Paul standard. Of course you got your black cover. But this is actually mounted in here with one of the mini humbucker brackets. You can also use them for P90 pickups. So you could swap in a mini hummer in here if you wanted to. And then stock from the mod collection, they actually had these little foam inserts that are just homemade, nothing too fancy, but they're there. And they also have the springs. Now, I might be saying, hey Trogly, isn't springs and foam a little bit overkill? That's so this pickup doesn't rock back and forth as much. I mean, it still rocks back and forth as it is now, but it's nowhere near as bad. I mean, that thing is really sticking up there. You can definitely confirm that amateur route. I mean, it's got a little bit showing, a little too much showing on this side. I think that's the true reason why we can see that mahogany ledge. But thankfully, you don't see that when you're normally looking at this. Now, as far as the bridge, it's just a regular Gibson USA one, except for it's black with API branding. It fits on rather snugly, so it's almost like maybe one of these posts is just a little bit too far over. I'm not sure. It's not too big of a deal. The bridge still secures. But you will notice there were no stop bar studs ever drilled in this guitar. So it is a factory original trapeze, but it's like a more modernized trapeze. Like you can actually take it off. It just has a little loop there that it secures on. And the way this thing works is it just has little tongs on the back that the ball end of the string secures onto, and then you can tune it up. But now let's get to the controls here. So yes, it does have black kill switches, but I'm a little bit saddened to see this. It's actually like a sparkle black, which I don't know really fits the vibe of this guitar. I was digging the whole pure black, but that is the style of kill switch that they're using in here. I'll be curious to see if they're actually Sanwa branded. I mean, they look and feel the part. So we'll have to see if they're wired up correctly too. Because sometimes kill switches can be a real pain and just be very noisy. It appears our Burstdriver circuit is on this push-push pot, so I would assume this means activated, and then we might be able to control it a little bit with that. And then maybe this is master volume, master tone. We'll have to find out when we plug it in. Check out this top. I'm really enjoying this color in person. It's a nice rusty orange. Definitely gives me spooky Halloween vibes, which surprisingly is just right around the corner. I probably should have saved this episode, but I can't tease you guys and make you wait that long. However, it also reminds me of the Finnish London Fog, and perhaps the original Darkfires would have had a case similar to that. However, the serial number on this one dates it to 2022, so maybe it was slightly inspired by that. But it definitely is not like a new old stock body or anything. Well, unless it's just the body and a new neck, but that's getting too crazy. Now let's toy around with resistance readings within the circuit. So everything normal, everything on 10, looks like that bridge P90 is reading 7.96 k ohms. Now when we activate the Burstdriver, that's interesting, it actually increases, but it doesn't seem to be affected when we like roll it down or anything. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes, and let's test, are they both kill switches? Maybe this one isn't. Is it doing something else? Uh-oh. Let's test this one up here. Go to 0. Yes, it does. All right, so this is not a kill switch, or it just wasn't wired up correctly. We'll have to find out. Now, this is the volume. This should go to 0. Yep, and then this will be a tone, not affected at all. I'd say the finish work was pretty good. I mean, there's a couple of like dings I notice when it's like the light's just on it, but nothing too over the top. Now, the rest of the guitar, there's a reason this was a factory second, guys. And you can't blame Gibson for this stuff because they caught it. They decided not to send it out. So the fretboard is actually really rough on this guy, especially up here in the first fret area. It's like all along the edge, it's just pretty rough. Like you could take some fine sandpaper and just make this look fantastic. But the tooling marks around the edges of this one, I mean, they're pretty extreme, especially in the binding, sometimes even on the fretboard. So they were definitely looking to pull examples that had that. That's a pretty chewed up area right there too. That's certainly a serviceable instrument. I mean, as far as the frets, everything's good. You got 22 medium jumbo frets, typical 24 3/4 inch scale length, the fret height of 0.046, a nut width of 1.7 inches. That increases to 2.08 by the 12th. First fret neck depth of 0.83. That increases to 0.9 by the 12th. So yeah, definitely a 60 standard neck. Here it is at the first fret and the 12th fret. Kind of a flatter back of the neck on this one, but still C-shaped. The nut looks a little bit sloppy on the edges, like it could have been profiled a little bit more. But now, my friends, nothing will prepare you for what you are about to see. A Gibson employee put something very questionable inside of my guitar. Underneath our truss rod cover, there's a googly eye. It's a damaged googly eye that's been bashed in, but it's a googly eye, and yeah, it's there. It's like all glued in and everything. That's got to be an employee's calling card. That way, you know, in the future, you know, like the RFL and FL signature stamps that we talk about in the early 80s. This is somebody right here trying to make their own legacy. So, Mr. Bashed in Googly Eye, you know who you are, and you know what you've done. About the truss rod cover, just pure black. And as we talked about earlier, no Les Paul modeled silkscreen on this one, just a mother of pearl Gibson logo. Now we move on to the back, where even more fun is here. So first off, you're going to notice, yes indeed, that is a Sanwa Killswitch. However, you're also going to notice it's red back here. So that means they painted red kill switches into that sparkle black. Okay, interesting choice. Also an interesting choice to put a bumblebee cap on that thing. Vintage with modern. Then I'll be real with you guys, that's pretty amateur looking solder work, but honestly I couldn't do that much better. But we do have an orange drop capacitor over here. Now let's take a look at this. So this is our Burstdriver circuit board right here. You can see it reads Gibson Custom Burstdriver 2017, and it has a few things soldered to it. Otherwise that's just on a push-pull pot. So that appears to be all one whole thing. But then we come over here to our back plate. And after doing some more research, I guess the original one isn't that special. It's just a black back plate. So I could potentially have one of those made, but I don't own that prototype one. So if any of the demo mod collection guys that are out there watching, if you have a spare one of these, I would love to not have to tear this thing apart for it. Because it was funny, I was just contacting the custom shop to see if they have them, and they said, yeah, we got them, but we're not handing those things out. But here's what's cool about this thing. The circuit board for the backplate here is also called Gibson Custom Burstdriver 2017. Got all those resistors and whatnot, but look at that. It's on a quick connect system. I didn't even realize it. When I took it off, I'm actually unplugging it because it goes into these. And then you do indeed have to use a 9-volt battery. I'm betting my battery's dead because my pot was engaged the entire time it was shipped. But to further complicate things here, the original backplates would have been labeled level, tone, and gain. So that's up to you to adjust it with a screwdriver to what you're normally going to want, and then in theory, your settings should not move once you have what you like. I'm excited to try that out, because this is the only Burstdriver equipped guitar, as of now, that has a P90 pickup. So that means, yes, I can still demo an original Burstdriver with the humbuckers and still be excited about it. But you're going to notice things like where they had to take some additional routes out of the side of the guitar right here to make sure everything fit. And we do have a BH signature in here. Looks like maybe an AR, something over here. I would assume that has something to do with the guys who modded this one up. But you can see you've got some edge wear here. Over here, that looks like a buffing burn to me. That just went straight through the finish. And then you have all these weird dots on the back of this one. Like, they are just everywhere. It's like the grain didn't get filled at all. I mean, sometimes we see it sinking, but it doesn't look like an actual ding. So is that actually like maybe there was a piece of dust that made the finish not form or something? I don't know. Those are just all over this guitar. But it is a gorgeous mahogany back. Has a little bit of a chatoyant effect to it. But we've got some sloppy stain work over here. Looks like maybe a little bit of glue run out of by the neck. This is what I think sentenced it to the demo shop in the first place. There's like a small chip, or the finish is uneven, something like that. Not gonna lie to you, that's an eyesore, because it's on the side that you see while you play. And along the edges you can see some more of those finish dips that we were talking about earlier, especially right here. And while we have it on the side, you can see some staining on the bottom binding right there. Now the neck's looking really gorgeous on this thing. I love that subtle burst job they did. But this is where I first noticed those dips. I mean, it's just all over the wings of this instrument. It's definitely not Gibson's finest work, but then again, it wasn't supposed to be. And it's labeled mod. And yes, those are Locking Grover tuners. That's a nice little upgrade. This one clocks in at 9 pounds, 2.4 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. Alright, so this is not a Killswitch, just like we thought, but a little bit more on that later. Let's just get a couple of tones out of our bridge P90 here. Obviously you got your volume control, then a tone. Your kill switch. Now you're going to notice there's a little bit of a pop on the clean sounds, but that's just how it always is with Gibson kill switches and most kill switches in general. I remember I sold a bucket head once and somebody was confused about that. That doesn't go away till you throw on the distortion. But this thing is completely different. See if you can figure out what it's doing. We'll kick on my distortion so you can hear it more. So basically, what that does, it's like rolling off your tone to 0 and to 10, but yet the button's just a little bit faster. I'm sure there's an interesting way you could use that. Maybe you guys can have some more ideas. But it kind of reminds me of like flipping one of your toggles to 0 and you just go da 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 da. You could also say it's kind of like an auto wah, but it's so hard to, you know, do what you would want for a wah effect and hit a button. And maybe if you add a whole bunch of reverb to it. get a double tap. Thing I could think of is maybe if you want to hit a hard chord and then soften it later on. So kind of a cool novelty. I'm glad they threw it on there. Sometimes it's nice to have two kill switches though, because some riffs feel better down here, other ones feel better up here. Okay, so that is our clean tone and me using my pedal distortion. What does the Burstdriver sound like? It actually sounds surprisingly good, guys. So once again, clean tone. Engage. And you can roll that knob down. It's not like a full-on tone effect, but you got a little bit of something there. And remember, you can adjust that. So here's with everything on 10. That's pretty sensitive, so this is drive off. Versus clean. Then for most of the demo, it's just about a quarter turn. But then it goes all the way up to this. And lastly, for good measure, we've got about 3/4 of the way. So overall, I'd say this thing's a lot of fun. I actually like the Burstdriver circuit. I mean, you can compare it to what I normally use. I mean, what I have right now is pretty aggressive. Versus this. Or you could be a madman and put both of them on. And more distortion. Now that we know all about this weird mod shop oddity, what are my final thoughts on this thing? Stellar time. Like, I knew this was gonna be a heck of a lot of fun, but I I had no idea how much fun this was actually going to be. Between, hidden googly eyes in this thing, weird hand routes. We've got a tone kill switch. We've got a volume kill switch. Now that makes a lot of sense when I put it that way. Single P90 pickup. This is one of those guitars where the trapeze tailpiece didn't really throw me off that much. I mean, it just feels like a regular Les Paul, but a little bit more special. And this finish just really comes to life. I mean, you can definitely see it right here, just how active it is. And after I conditioned that fretboard, it's all nice and dark and matches the rest of this guitar perfectly. I had a fantastic time. I'm contemplating keeping this thing because I was really inspired by this. I played it probably about a good 2 hours before I actually sat down to record. Now, as far as the Burstdriver circuit, I thought it actually sounded great for the classic rock style tones. Now, if you're wanting something a little bit heavier than that, probably not. But, maybe Gibson should release these as a real pedal. People might like it. Now, as far as how this one was crafted and built, we've got a whole bunch of stuff, but there was a reason why it was in the demo shop / mod collection. But anyways, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to strong arm this thing off me, feel free to send me an offer to Austin at Trogly's Guitar Show. Otherwise, I don't know, I might just hold on to this. All right, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.